In 1926, beneath the ruins of ancient Lagash, workmen lifted a clay tablet from a sealed jar buried for 4,000 years. The cataloguer who examined it spent less than an hour with it, wrote one cautious line in the ledger, and shut it in a basement drawer where it stayed unread for half a century. When a Leiden philologist finally translated it in 1974, she refused for months to tell anyone what it said. The tablet describes a small winged creature sent down from the sky. It describes the BE, and it describes its purpose. It never stopped performing it. Before anything else, take a moment now and tap that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear spent half a century buried in accession, ledgers and restricted basement drawers, and the only way more of these forgotten translations reach the surface is if channels like this one keep growing. Tap subscribe, turn the notifications on, and let us continue. The story of how the tablet came back into the light begins with a woman named Halverson, a junior philologist from the University of Leiden, who arrived at the University of Pennsylvania Museum in the autumn of 1973 on a 9-month research exchange. Halverson was 31 years old, a specialist in late 3rd millennium temple documents, and she had been given the assignment that no senior scholar wanted. The staff called it the residue drawer, a collection of roughly 180 minor tablets, fragments, and seal impressions recovered from the Lagash expeditions of the 1920s and never formally examined. Most of the residue was administrative: inventories of barley, receipts for oil, lists of temple labourers and the rations owed to them, the kind of bureaucratic sediment that settles in the corners of every Mesopotamian excavation and waits, sometimes for generations, for someone with enough patience to read it. In her 5th week, Halverson pulled drawer 9. Inside it, wrapped in oiled cotton that had gone brittle with age, was a tablet no larger than a woman's palm, its surface carrying cuneiform pressed with unusual fineness, almost tenderness, as though the scribe had understood that what he was recording could never be repeated. The catalogue card gave the number L 1893 and a single line of description written in 1927 by an assistant cataloguer who had spent, by his own note, less than an hour with the piece. The line read, "Content of religious or mythological nature, defer to senior staff." No senior staff had ever come. The tablet had waited 47 years. Halverson would later write in a private letter to a colleague at Uppsala that she knew within the first 8 lines that what she was holding did not belong in the residue drawer at all. It belonged somewhere else, she wrote, somewhere the museum did not yet have a shelf for, because the museum did not yet believe such a shelf could be needed. The paleography dated the tablet to the final kings of the 3rd dynasty of Ur, more than 4,000 years before her own time. The scribe identified himself in the opening lines by a name that translates roughly as Legalsig, son of Urnamhani, a temple official attached to the Aninnu, the great house of the god Ningirsu, at Lagash. The opening was formal. It invoked the high gods, it asked the favour of the scribe of heaven, and it declared that what followed was a true accounting of an old matter given to the writer by his father, who had received it from his father. Going back, the tablet says, to the days when the gods still walked among men, and the breath of the green world had not yet grown thin. That phrase, the breath of the green world, appears 7 times across the tablet's surface, and Halverson would spend the better part of a year trying to determine what it referred to. Her eventual conclusion, defended in an unpublished monograph she completed in 1976, was that it referred to something the Sumerians believed moved invisibly between all growing things, a living thread connecting blossom to fruit, field to field, season to season, a thread that could fray, a thread that could be cut. We will return to that detail because it matters more than it sounds. What she read next, in the lamplit quiet of the museum's reading room, was the reason the tablet had been sealed in a jar in the first place. The scribe had recorded the arrival on Earth of a small winged creature, brought down out of the sky by the Anunnaki for a purpose the tablet names in 3 words: the binding, the carrying, the keeping. Halverson set the tablet down. She left the reading room and stood for a long time in the corridor outside, beneath the tall windows, and a museum guard who passed her there would later recall that she did not appear to see him at all. Then she came back, sat down, and began to translate. She worked in the evenings after her assigned cataloguing was done, and she told no one what the tablet contained. Her notebooks from those months, which survive in a private collection in the Netherlands, show a translator moving with extreme caution, testing each sign against every known parallel, refusing to let the text become what it so clearly wanted to become. On one page, beside a cluster of signs she had rendered and crossed out and rendered again, she wrote a single sentence in Dutch that translates as, "I keep hoping I am wrong, and the tablet keeps telling me I'm not." By midwinter, she had established the shape of the whole text. It was not a hymn, it was not a myth in the ordinary sense. It was written in the calm, administrative voice that Sumerian scribes reserved for their most serious matters, the voice of inventories and legal records, the voice of men writing down what they believed to be simply true. The tablet was an accounting. It recorded what had been sent, why it had been sent, and what it had been sent to do. And at the centre of that accounting, described with a precision that left no room at all for doubt, was a small striped creature with wings, a creature that gathered gold dust from the mouths of flowers and carried it leg to leg, blossom to blossom, from the first light of morning until the last. The creature was the bee, and according to the scribe of Lagash, it had not come from here. What the tablet describes next is the arrival. The Anunnaki, the scribe records, came down from their dwelling places in the higher sky to inspect the early settlements of men, and they found among the fields of men a great wrongness. The land was flowering, but it was not fruiting. The orchard stood white with blossom in the spring, and the blossom fell and nothing followed it. The barley came up thin, the date palms held their flowers out to the wind, and the wind took nothing from them and gave nothing back. The children of men were hungry in years when, by every sign the farmers knew, no one should have been hungry at all. The elders went to the priests, and the priests went to the offering stones, and the offering stones carried the message upward. And the gods, the tablet says, recognized the cause of the wrongness immediately, because the cause was not new to them. The cause, the tablet states with no hesitation at all, was that the breath of the green world had grown thin. The living thread that ran from blossom to blossom, the thread that bound the flower to the fruit that should come after it, was fraying. And it was fraying, the scribe writes, because things from outside the world were feeding on it. The tablet calls them the witherers. It says they have no bodies, that they move in the still air of the hottest hours, and that where they pass, the thread between growing things is thinned the way a rope is thinned by rubbing against stone. Men could not see them. Men could only see what they left behind, which was blossom without fruit, flower without seed, spring without harvest. The Anunnaki conferred among themselves. One of them, named in the tablet as Nindarazi, the Lady of the Growing Things, proposed a solution. The solution was to bring down from a world the tablet never names, referring to it only as the golden star of the ninth house, a small creature that already existed there for exactly this purpose. A creature whose eyes could see the thread that human eyes could not. A creature whose body, though small, was made to carry the binding substance of the thread itself, and whose presence the witherers could not endure. The tablet then describes this creature in a passage that occupies nearly a third of its entire surface, and the description is unmistakable. A body in bands of gold and darkness, so that it carries on its back, in the words of the scribe, the pattern of the sun passing through the shadow of the world, wings that move faster than the eye can follow, so that the creature appears to hang in the air upon a blur, legs bearing small baskets into which it gathers the golden dust from the mouths of flowers. The scribe calls this dust the seed breath, and he says the creature carries it from blossom to blossom not for itself, but because the carrying is the retying of the thread. Each flower touched, the tablet says, is a knot restored. The creature lives, the scribe continues, not alone but in great houses of its own building, houses made of a substance that is neither stone nor wood nor clay, shaped in chambers of 6 walls each, every chamber identical, every wall meeting its neighbours at the same angle, thousands upon thousands of them, built in darkness without any drawing to work from. And within these houses the creatures make a golden food that does not spoil. The tablet is specific on this point. It says the golden food can sit for 100 years and remain as it was, and that this is because it is made partly from the seed breath and carries the thread's own permanence within it. Anyone who has read of honey taken edible from ancient tombs has met, whether they knew it or not, exactly the property the scribe of Lagash recorded 4,000 years ago. And the creature carries one more thing, the tablet says, a single small spear at the end of its body which it may use only once. If it uses the spear, it dies. The scribe pauses over this detail in a way he pauses over nothing else. He writes that the spear is not a weapon in the way the weapons of men are weapons, because no soldier of men carries a weapon whose use is his own death. The spear, he writes, is a seal of seriousness. It was given so that the creature would never strike carelessly, and so that men would understand that when it strikes, it is spending its life to do so. The scribe gives the creature a name, and the name is where Halverson's difficulties began. The tablet calls it the Nimgirsu Dub, a term she translated, with considerable hesitation, as the binder of the bloom. She hesitated because the ordinary Sumerian word for the bee in surviving texts is nim, and the term appears in no other tablet from any other site. It is used once, only here, on L1893. Halverson's interpretation, defended in the 1976 monograph, is that it was never the common word for the animal at all. It was a ceremonial word, a priestly word. In the marketplace, the bee was nim. In the language of the temple, when the priest spoke of what the creature had been sent here to do, the bee was the binder of the bloom, the one who keeps the thread from breaking. The next passage describes the deployment. The Anunnaki brought down the creatures in numbers the tablet records as more than the drops of a spring rain, and placed them first in the temple gardens, then in the orchards of kings, and finally at the edges of the fields of ordinary men. The order is deliberate, and the tablet is specific about why. The temple gardens came first because the gardens of the temples were planted, in the worldview of the scribe, upon the places where the thread ran thickest, the crossing points where many strands met. The creatures were set there to guard the crossings first, the way one guards a bridge before guarding a road. Only when the crossings were held were the creatures released outward, generation by generation, into all the flowering world. From that day, the scribe writes, the blossom was followed by the fruit again. The heart of the tablet, the passage that made Halverson leave the reading room and stand in the corridor, is the sequence in which the scribe records the original purpose of the creature in 7 specific functions. He writes them in order, in the calm administrative voice that Sumerian scribes use for all serious matters, as though he were listing the duties of a temple official. In a sense, the tablet would say that is exactly what he was doing. The first function is the carrying of the seed breath. The golden dust of the flowers, the tablet says, is not merely dust. It is the visible portion of the thread itself, the one part of the breath of the green world that men can see and touch. When the creature gathers it from one blossom and sets it upon another, it is not feeding, it is tying. Each visit is a knot, and a field visited by the creatures 1,000 times in a morning is a field bound 1,000 times over. Anyone who has watched a bee move from flower to flower with what looks like tireless, almost mechanical purpose has seen exactly what the scribe described. We have been taught to call it foraging. The tablet says it is the work. The second function is the drawing of the maps. When the creature returns to its house, the tablet says it dances. It walks in circles and lines upon the wall of the house, waggling its body, tracing the same figure again and again while its sisters gather close around it. Modern science discovered this dance in the 20th century and concluded that it communicates the direction and distance of food. The tablet, written 4,000 years earlier, describes the same dance and says something different. It says the creature is drawing the places where the thread has frayed, so that the house may know where the tying is most urgently needed. The dance is not a map of flowers, the scribe writes. The dance is a map of wounds. The third function is the building of the 6-walled chambers. The shape of 6 sides, the tablet says, is not a shape of this world. It was given to the creature before it was sent down, because the witherers cannot cross a boundary of 6 walls meeting at equal angles. The house of the creature is therefore a sealed vault, the one structure into which the witherers can never enter, and the golden food stored within it is the one food they can never touch. The scribe adds that men who kept the golden food in their dwellings were keeping, without knowing it, a small sealed portion of the thread inside their own walls. The fourth function is the swarming. From time to time, the tablet says, a great portion of the house rises up all at once, a cloud of thousands, and moves together across the land to settle in a new place. The men of the scribe's own time feared the swarms and read them as omens, and the tablet says they were right to read them as omens, but wrong about what the omen meant. The swarm does not flee. The swarm is sent. It moves to the place where the thread is breaking fastest, the way water moves to the lowest ground. A swarm settling near a village, the scribe writes, is not a danger arriving. It is a repair arriving. The fifth function is the testing of the blossoms. The creature does not visit every flower. Anyone who has watched one work a garden has seen it approach a bloom, hover before it, and turn away without landing. We have been taught to call this the reading of scent, the judgment of nectar. The tablet says the creature is inspecting. It says some blossoms have been touched by the witherers and carry their residue, and that the creature refuses these, and that a flower refused by the binder of the bloom will fall without fruit no matter what else visits it. The refusal is not preference, the refusal is quarantine. The sixth function is the dying away from the house. When the creature is sick, or when it has taken into its body something that does not belong there, it does not return home. It flies out alone and does not come back, and it ends in the grass, far from the chambers and the stores and the sisters. Modern observers have recorded this behaviour and named it altruistic self-removal, a hygiene of the hive. The tablet recorded it first, and the tablet says more. It says the creature carries the contamination out beyond the boundary of the thread and lays down its life on the far side of it, so that what it carries dies with it. The scribe writes that no man has ever been asked to do so much, so quietly, for so little thanks. The seventh function, the scribe writes, is the one that cannot be fully explained in human language, because it requires concepts his own teachers were never able to transmit. It is described only as the giving of the great sound, the hum, the low-layered, unbroken vibration that rises from the house of the creatures and from every field they work, the sound we have been taught to call the beating of wings. The tablet says the hum is not the beating of wings. The tablet says the hum is a frequency set into the design of the creature before it was sent down, and that the thread itself is strung to that frequency, the way the string of an instrument is strung to a note. So long as the hum continues over a field, the thread of that field stays taut. The scribe calls it the sound of the loom. A summer meadow in full hum, the tablet would tell us, is not a place where many small animals happen to be working. It is a single instrument, playing the one note that holds the fabric of the growing world in tension. And a silent field, the scribe adds, in the only sentence on the tablet that Halverson marked in her notebook with a line down the margin, a silent field is not a field at rest. A silent field is a field where the loom has stopped. Halverson completed her translation in the spring of 1976. It ran to 38 pages. She submitted it to 3 journals. All 3 rejected it. One returned the manuscript with a letter stating that the subject matter was unsuitable for serious philological publication. Another sent it for peer review, and reported that the reviewers could not agree on whether the work was genuine scholarship or an elaborate fabrication. The third kept the manuscript for 11 months and returned it without comment. She circulated the translation privately in mimeographed copies to a small circle of colleagues at Leiden, Uppsala, Oxford and Chicago. The copies were passed hand to hand, photocopied, recopied, and over the following decades they entered the underground literature of fringe Mesopotamian studies, where they remain. The tablet itself was quietly transferred in 1983 from the open archive of the Penn Museum to a restricted storage facility in the lower basement, where access now requires written approval from the curator of the Near Eastern collection. Researchers who have requested that approval over the past 4 decades report, almost without exception, the same outcome. The requests are denied, no reason is given, the drawer stays closed. The history that followed reads, if the tablet is to be believed, like a long, slow act of forgetting. The Egyptians, who rose roughly 1,000 years after the scribe of Lagash set down his stylus, placed the bee at the very centre of their kingship. The bee was the written symbol of Lower Egypt itself, pressed into the royal title of every pharaoh, so that no king could name himself without naming the creature. They sealed jars of honey into their greatest tombs, food for eternity, the one provision they trusted not to fail. None of this makes sense if the bee was merely a useful insect that sweetened bread. It makes complete sense if the Egyptians had inherited, from the civilizations before them, the understanding that the creature was a guardian whose posting had never expired. They did not invent the reverence, they received it, and the reverence survived, thinning century by century in the folk customs of Europe. For hundreds of years, in villages across England, Germany, and the Low Countries, families observed a practice known as telling the bears. When someone in the household died, when a child was born, when a marriage was made, a member of the family walked out to the hives and spoke the news aloud to them, formally, as one reports to an official. If the bees were not Told, the custom held, they would leave. The hives would empty and the household would fall into misfortune. Folklorists have catalogued this practice for 2 centuries and called it superstition. The tablet would call it the last surviving fragment of protocol. The bees were once honoured as posted guardians, and a guardian must be kept informed of the household it guards. The telling was not sentiment. The telling was procedure, remembered long after the reason was lost. Then the reason was lost entirely. The creature was recategorized as livestock, as machinery, as a unit of agricultural input, trucked between monocrops, dosed and measured and rented by the acre. And beginning in the first decade of this century, beekeepers across the world opened their hives and found them empty. No dead bodies, no invader. The workers simply gone, the queen abandoned, the golden food left sealed and untouched in its 6-walled chambers. Science named it colony collapse disorder, and has spent 20 years proposing causes, pesticides, parasites, pathogens, without settling on one. The tablet proposes nothing, because the tablet was written 4,000 years too early to know, but the scribe recorded what the priests of the Anu said would happen if the creatures were ever driven to withdraw. The houses would empty first, he wrote. The hum would thin, the blossom would once again outnumber the fruit. And within the span of 3 generations, the fields of men would begin, quietly, and without obvious cause, to fall silent. There is no alarm in his sentences. There is only the recording of what he was told by men whose business it was to know. What Halverson's translation forces us to confront, if we accept it even provisionally, is that everything we believe about this relationship is upside down. We do not keep bees. The tablet would say they were placed among us. We did not domesticate them. The tablet would say they accepted a posting. We do not take their honey in exchange for shelter. We take a sealed portion of the thread itself and they permit it for as long as they are honoured. The bee moving flower to flower in your garden is not foraging. The swarm crossing the summer sky is not fleeing. The hum rising from a meadow in June is not the sound of wings. Every one of these things, the tablet would say, is the same set of 7 functions the scribe recorded 4,000 years ago, preserved entirely within the creature, even as the civilization that once understood them has forgotten almost everything. Halverson died in 2011 without seeing her translation published by any major press. The mimeographed copies still circulate. The tablet still sits in its restricted drawer in Philadelphia, and the requests to see it are still denied. And the bees, in every garden and orchard and roadside verge where they have kept their houses, continue. They carry the seed breath, they draw the maps, they build the 6 walls, they test the blossoms, and over every field where they still work, they make the sound the scribe of Lagash recorded as the sound of the loom. Whatever you believe about the tablet, whatever you believe about the Anunnaki or the golden star of the 9th house, there is one observation that requires no belief at all. Tomorrow, find something flowering, stand near it, watch how the bee chooses and refuses and returns, listen to the hum and ask yourself honestly whether you are hearing wings or hearing a note that something is holding steadily so that a thread you cannot see does not break. Near its damaged final edge, the tablet gives its last legible line, and Halverson placed it alone on the last page of her translation. The bees remember what we have forgotten, and that is why they will not stay where they are not honoured.